And we've often thought and talked about that, Sterling and I. And this, if anybody were to ask me now, it's like, what's the missing secret sauce? I would say this.
Yep, the mindset.
This right here,
sure.
what we're talking about right now.
For sure.
What we're talking about in this episode and some of the stuff we're going to talk about in the next episode. This is the secret sauce. And it all comes back to mindset, like you were saying. Okay, so what about this whole failure stuff? We're talking about, this, after all, the name of this episode is How to Fail at Online Business in 3 Easy Steps. So we talked about what we want. We want happiness, which we've broken down into freedom, relationships, and purpose. So the other day we were thinking about this failure thing because obviously there's different things that we've seen. We've worked with a lot of people starting internet businesses, and there's different things that hold people back. But often it's some form of fear of failure. Is often this whole idea of what is failure, what is really risk, and is there failure? And we've talked about, look, there is no failure. There's only feedback, and you learn from your failures. You go to bat over and over again. Eventually, you're going to hit the home run. Yes, sometimes you strike out. And for the most part, I think I do agree with that statement that there is no failure. It's just feedback. But as Sterling and I were talking recently, we realized that I threw out this idea is like, I think there might actually be 3 ways to fail in business and really in life and success and happiness in general. 3 ways. And this is what it boils down to. First of all, the first kind of failure, the first way that you can fail at internet business or life for that matter is not having reached the level of freedom that you knew you could have and that you deserved.
Yeah, and I think that, this is going to be one of those ongoing battles that will definitely change as you go. Like what I thought was freedom in the beginning, as I said, and it's progressed as I got different tastes of time freedom. So, for example, at first, I just wanted to have the power over my time. I wanted to work when it suited me and not be a slave to time or to a job. And I got that pretty quick. And now it's about being a slave, let's say, to my business. Meaning, I should be able to, let's say, leave for a couple weeks if I want, come back, and it's grown. Like, that's the next level of freedom for me. Even while I'm gone, the business grows rather than floundering. And that's just one example. So it's like, it's an ongoing thing as you go as to what level of freedom and that kind of thing. But definitely not having reached a level of freedom or any level of freedom let's say at the end of life would be something that I would definitely see for myself as a failure.
And so examples, I totally agree with that. And it is an ongoing process. And examples of this would be, accepting circumstance or the status quo that society has handed to you or tried to teach you and just going, oh, well, that's the only way. Or, putting up with relationships that aren't healthy or that really need to be examined or renegotiated or being a slave to your business, this thing that you created for the purpose of freedom and it ends up taking over your life. And so then the rest of your life suffers. Or, just accepting it's like, oh, well, I just have to live where I live because of this job I have. Or, when really like your life would be much more fulfilled living on the East Coast or in a tropical island or whatever it is for you. Or maybe, it's going out into suburbia and having the nice house and whatever. But, so those are some of the examples. And like we said, there's lots of different types of freedom, which is why this is an ongoing process. But if you're not striving for more, and you get to the end of your life and it's like, I didn't even try for a level of freedom that I really knew I could have had or deserved, then I think that's an unfortunate thing because it's a hindrance to happiness and hence maybe, one type of failure that there could be. Number 2 thing then is not to have acquired and enjoyed the kind of relationships that you want. And again, this is going to be a different definition for everyone. Like we said, some people want to be surrounded by their family at the end of their lives. Some people will have been happy to have just created a legacy that impacted a lot of people around the world. Some people would have been happy just some with kids, some don't need kids, some, with a life partner, some without. But whatever that is, that really, and I think inside of yourself what kind of connectedness you want and need in your life, and to have not allowed yourself or negotiated those things or acquired them and enjoyed them in your life, and to have reached into your life and realized that, I think would be another kind of failure.
Definitely.
And the third way to fail in business or really in success in life is not to have fulfilled your purpose. And there's a story at the beginning of Strengths Finder, and it goes something like this. And I found it very poignant. I mean, and as a note, it's about a guy who goes into the afterlife, and whatever your approach to whether you believe in an afterlife or not, this is a very, I think, illustrative story. And that is that this guy arrives at the gates of whatever, heaven, nirvana, whatever you call it. And he's about to go in, and he's curious. He's a curious guy. And so the guy that there's to greet him, he said, I've always wondered, because I'm an artistic guy, I've always wondered, well, who was the greatest poet that ever was? I liked reading and philosophizing and reading poetry and appreciating art. And I've always was in search of like the greatest poet ever. Who is that? And the guy said, actually, he's standing right over there. And he points at a guy, and he looks over at the guy that this greeter or welcomer had pointed to. And he recognizes it as just this, average peasant down the street who had just lived a very simple and plain life. And he goes, oh, that guy wasn't a poet. What are you talking about? He's like, well, yeah, but had he chosen to be a poet, had he actually fulfilled that purpose that he had inside of himself, he would have been the greatest poet that ever was. And, we all define our own purpose and our own happiness, but I think it would be a failure to reach the end of your life knowing that you had within you a desire to do something, a strength, a talent, a unique ability, a value that you could have offered both to yourself, to your happiness, as well as maybe even those around you, and to not have achieved that thing. And, that's why it just really hit me when I read that story. I was like, yeah, I do not want to be that person at the end of my life going, man, what could I have been had, if only, kind of thing.
Yeah, so my first business didn't even come close to fulfilling my purpose, as I worked 12 hours a day making and shipping products that weren't even mine. Now, of course, I didn't know that in the beginning, that wouldn't be fulfilling because I didn't know what my purpose was, but I realized that I really hated doing that. And I did know very quickly that I needed to be able to help people through my own voice and also not to have to ship products. So that's something that, rather than, just going, wow, I really hate this, and this must be what internet business is, and stopping doing that, which would have been failure for sure. I just went, okay, well, how do I do this so I like it? Well, I knew I wanted to do my voice, what I have to say about it, and really help people, and again, not have to ship actual physical products.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and sum up then what we're saying here. I mean, the three ways to fail. There are three ways to fail in business and life. Number one would be, and you're going to see a common theme here in each one, but number one would be, don't take action towards increased freedom in your life that you want and that you deserve.
Yeah, so picture yourself having stayed in this unfulfilling place you might be in now. And for me, I really hated to pretend to care about stuff that I didn't have any interest in. And that was another big motivator for me. As I said, I really thought about what it would be for another 20 to 30 years of nodding my head, pretending I cared about stuff I want. I mean, that was really painful for me. And that was only one thing, but that's just, the example that I'm giving is every single day having to pretend I cared about stuff I didn't. And again, 20 or 30 more years of that, I was just like, I can't do this.
I can't even imagine that now. That, I mean, knowing you now, and I guess I, probably met you maybe a couple or so years after that, you were at that point, but, I'm sitting here trying to picture you. Like, I can't even imagine you in that position. Like, I'm like, that is so not Sterling. It's just not.
Well, and could you imagine too, it was, okay, we need to put Paris Hilton more in this video. And I'm like,
great
yes,
idea.
You are correct.
Sir.
I love her. This is great.
Voice, yeah.
What a great job. Exactly.
So the number two way to fail would be, don't take action towards acquiring and enjoying the relationships that you really want in life.
Yeah, and I guess for me, it was being with my kids. I couldn't get that time back. So, like it would be like saying, sorry, daddy has to work. I would really have felt a hole later in life if I had to say that stuff for all of their young life. That was just another driving pain that really helped me continue with this business, even when it was hard or even a little bit boring. Like, I definitely didn't like creating websites per se. And of course, we have ways to not have to do that anyway in the academy, so don't have to go through the boring part. And then there was just parts that weren't fun. Like, it's a business, you got to do it, and that can happen sometimes. But for me, like, being able to look at that and have to say that to my kids their whole childhood, that was a pain that helped me actually take action for it.